Oh hey, didn't see you there. When you think of big name anime, what's the first show that comes to mind? Maybe Dragon Ball, or Sword Art Online, or Doraemon? For as big as those names tend to be, they can only go so far as a solo act. Just as Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel, Adam Sandler, Jim Carrey, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Beyonce, Justin Timberlake, Neil Young, John Lennon, and Freddie Mercury. Wait,
Anime shows tend to draw themselves toward other productions of their kin, be it by similar studios, the genres they portray, the evocative material they act through, or simply by community designation. Through these happenstances, how anime is classified amongst its peers is not written as law. Like with how Netflix or Crunchyroll will label shows with similar facets, a show's categorization is arbitrary and transient.
that being said, the topic of projecting anime and fan idealized groups is not as subjective. Case in point, the Big Three.
When you're a new fan of anime, you'd eventually run into the term the Big Three sooner or later. The term refers directly to the trinity of early 2000s Shonen Jump shows of yesteryear: One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. All having debuted within years of one another, the three stories culminated in the weekly Shonen Jump magazine between 1997 and 2001, where they respectively become adapted into anime. Coming off the TV debuts of these tales would overwhelmingly spark a multi-billion-dollar revolution.
Simply put, the audience these shows reached in particular were almost nothing like what the industry saw before. Not in terms of demographics, those were a given. But if you want to be fair, since then, the demographics has also exceeded expectations. No, what really jumpstarted the Shonen Jumpstart was honestly really simple. Every child's innate desire for violence.
The numbers these shows managed to scale towards was unimaginably pronounced. And yes, that is thanks in part to how oriented the violence was directed.
Around this time, at least here in the US, the most popular shows did have some sort of penchant towards fighting or aggressive undertones to help normalize children to this kind of entertainment, like Powerpuff Girls, Batman, X-Men, and of course the most psychological one, Rugrats.
Plus, it's not like anime prior didn't have any fighting either. Dragon Ball is the obvious one, but then there's also shows like Sailor Moon, where we respect gender equality violence. One of Pokemon's main selling points is being the very best at fighting, which would eventually turn into Michael Vick's typical playbook. But what was seen in One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach was something unlike before. Despite the heavy censorship these shows were subjected to, their presence was nevertheless felt in every punch, sound effect, and implication they built upon. They were more violence oriented, but they weren't violence reliant. Beyond the measures of Arlong eating floor or holy crap, they just showed demonic murder on cable television, the stories themselves held on to why the fighting was necessary as a narrative showcase in storytelling.
Let's put it this way. You can have gratuitous violence in movies like James Bond, shows like Spider-Man, and even reading material like Harry Potter, and if you cut those out, you won't miss a thing. With Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach, while they did have them, the atmospheric build and setup to the story and character drives really enhanced the fight scenes as much as vice versa.
How these individual shows portrayed violence at their own respective paces and styles glued whatever audience members to their seats, and I do mean individual. While they are commonly grouped together, it is still important to point out how different these shows were, right down to the very concepts. If you didn't like pirates, you could pick ninjas. If you didn't like ninjas, you could go for reapers. And if you didn't like any of these options,
Well, you're the weirdo here.
this was a weird point of contention for me, even back then, that you have to like one and only one of these shows. It was always a contest of whichever show was better, and if you like two or all three of them, then you were the indecisive one.
Ironically, if you didn't like Naruto, you'd be subjected to hazing by Naruto fans. And that is not the ninja way. Though, to be fair, if you're talking about anime at the same age as those characters in the show, then you're probably already being alienated.
The schoolyard debates on who would kick whose ass were stupid but nostalgically memorable, and I think we can all laugh at how petty and unimportant they were.
Well, except for Reddit and Twitter. And certain parts of YouTube now that I think about it. Oh, and also, and then there's fanfiction.com, which is, whoo boy, that is a completely different wildfire. And of course, there's also Demons Art. And finally, SpaceJam.com. Whew. Point is, the internet is a very serious place, and you are not allowed to have fun.
One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach really were the gateway shows to anime for a ton of people. Even if you had prior exposure to anime, the sheer volume in the community's discussion and vibrato of the shows themselves really thrusted Japanese animation's reputation in the West forward, be it for the variety in the shows, how they told their tales, or some other ulterior factors.
For as comparable the shows were as hype action adventures, the notions each one had that the others didn't split them enough to really make sound arguments. It's like comparing the Dark Knight to Iron Man. They're really similar, but they have about as 5 times as many differences.
You can really see the differences within the cast of the shows. For example, One Piece's protagonist is a fight-savvy doofus with little regard to rules and prefers doing whatever he wants. Meanwhile, Naruto's protagonist
Whose name I forget. I don't know. I think they said it like once or twice.
is an impulsive bonehead too, but also knows his limits in terms of knowledge and wants to learn from higher authorities. And Bleach's protagonist is the cool kid, who's more attuned to listen and think things through.
Which takes great restraint considering he's the one with the giant sword.
The supporting cast, villains, and even filler characters really help build each world as their own while also managing to conform to the whims of the protagonists and the authors. This really did help distinguish these shows aside from other localized anime of the time.
Now, I'm not going to subject you to story summaries of these shows that you've definitely heard hundreds of times already. Not yet, anyway. But the legacy of the Big Three still holds strong, even after these shows have run their course all these many years afterwards. What do you mean One Piece is still going on? What the fuck?
The influence and the weight the moniker The Big Three still resonates today as some people consistently compare newer shows to match the current state of anime as well as the trailblazing traits of the original holders. Black Clover, My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, heck, shows that aren't based on Jump even get called out like SAO, Attack on Titan, and Isekai Flavor of the Week. And it's not hard to see why. Frankly, with how anime has grown with audience reception in this world of quick and enriched entertainment, the numbers are certainly comparable. In a way, it's quite a circle the industry unintentionally made, but nevertheless capitalized on. From drawn in young audiences back then to the growth in technology with equal parts creativity and clout to renew the cycle for old and new fans to proclaim their own big threes.
Without fail, people will naturally gravitate towards both shows that grab their attention and shows that everyone else is talking about. And so, the way we navigate and engage in this figurative landscape of the potential next big thing isn't entirely without merit or reason.
What I mean by that is that as people grow to appreciate the art more, they'll also tend to acknowledge the impact certain shows had on them, be it the original Big Three or other respectable shows, like Keijo.
For a point of reference, the shows for me would be Cowboy Bebop, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and the Melancholy Haruhi Suzumiya. Now, these aren't necessarily my favorites, I just believe that they're the defining works in the modeling of contemporary anime, and that they should be seen by everyone at least once in their life. I should also establish that this is just my opinion, so please calm down, SpaceJam.com.
There's definitely an argument for every other major work of the past 3/4 century, but to me, Bebop, Evangelion, and Haruhi are my big three. The cultural sewing these anime did to the industry and the community has been ingrained right into the annals of pop culture, with whole essays, films, and theses centered on single episodes of each one. While they certainly aren't perfect and frankly a bit esoteric, especially in this current climate of anime, their offshoot styles culminating in their unique ways in telling their prose about the distorted yet humanistic philosophies about and beyond our perception of the world hold a certain wonder about their pronunciation as art. They're also really good at making anyone who talk about them sound like a complete tool. This is why the citation of big projects together isn't just some fanfare, or at least fanfare not worth noting. Shows become bigger as they constantly evolve. The worth from whence they came from gives them the earned respect, audience, and love resulting from how people watched, compared, and discussed them. You can easily go beyond the Shonen Jump trio and look at other notable unrelated works, and see where they get their inspirations from their predecessors and their contemporaries. Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Digimon, the Isekai Quartet, and of course the best group you can't deny, Little sister anime.
Uh-huh.
Well, under whatever circumstances, the Big Three is nothing short of a term worthy of the weeb lexicon. What it represents now is far larger than just the names of three of anime's biggest phenomenons. It can be perceived as a badge of honor and integrity veiled from loving communities, insightful conversations, hearty nostalgia, and an artistic belief that differences can still make the whole stronger.
And to be honest, I probably wouldn't be here without them. Naruto was the first show I watched when I was seriously getting into anime, and One Piece and Bleach still hail as great works with fantastic elements to them. Like, even though they aren't as prevalent or in the spotlight as they were in their heyday, I think they're still worthy of being called big. And there's certainly a reason why they're still gonna be staying around for the next 10, 20, 100, maybe even thousands of years. Because they're just that emotionally driven and really connected. That's how big their legacy is. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to catch up on my One Piece. Yeah, I'm not sure you can call it just big anymore.